I just want to let you know that you could not possibly be more disappointed in me than I was in myself. You could not have been more ashamed of me than I was of myself. You could not possibly have judged me harsher than I was, and to an extent still am, judging myself. In saying that, I did feel your disappointment, I did feel your shame, and I did feel your judgment. For future reference, when you see someone choking, it's not because they don't care. It's because they care too much. And I cared. I cared because I knew that my performance could bring joy to so many people, you included. I cared because my performance could reflect the brilliance of my coach and my amazing team. I cared because I wanted this image of myself that everyone else could see and yet I could not. I cared because of all the sacrifices that my family has made over the years for me. I cared because I had worked harder for this, wanted this more, and given more of myself to this than anything else in my life. And I cared because it had become part of my identity. I cared because that's what I do. I care.
That voice you just heard was Olympic gold medalist and national treasure, Cate Campbell. And it was part of an open letter that she wrote to Australia after the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. Back then, she was competing in the 100-metre freestyle, you might remember, and she was the undisputed favourite for that race. But when she dived into the pool, things didn't go according to plan. Not her plan, not the nation's plan. Cate came 6th in the race. And in seconds, actually fractions of seconds, she went from being Australia's golden girl to the target of our country's collective anger and disappointment. Because, you know, when one of our sports people win, their victory is our victory. But when they lose, they carry that burden on their own. From Mamma Mia, I'm Mia Freedman, and you're listening to the No Filter podcast, where I chat with people who have a big story to tell. Cate's not my only guest today. She's also here with her sister Bronte Campbell, and together they've spent thousands and thousands of hours looking at black lines at the bottom of a swimming pool. The sisters, who are just 2 years apart, train together and compete against one another. They're both Olympic swimmers who were born and raised in Malawi. I bet you didn't know that, I didn't. But they moved to Australia with their family in 2001, where they joined their local swimming club as a way to make friends. Instead, they discovered their shared passion, and freestyle became their stroke of choice. Cate and Bronte's profession, swimming, is a bloody tough one. They train twice a day, don't go out much, and they have less than a minute every 4 years in their event to achieve their goals at the Olympics. But they love it. They'd want to love it. And their love for it is infectious. It was an absolute joy to talk to these two. They are smart and funny and bubbly, and they have offered to coach me in the pool, which means Olympic gold is a near certainty in my own future. In this conversation, you'll hear about the importance of failure, how you can cry and swim at the same time, and the expiry date that hangs over the head of all elite athletes. Here's my conversation with the delightful Cate and Bronte Campbell. Guys, are you in training at the moment?
Yes. Not at this current second, but we did come straight from training. So, yeah, if you're smelling the chlorine, that's just us.
It's a nice kind of a fragrance. I wanted to ask what daily life looks like when you are in training.
There's a lot of getting in and out of the pool, to the point where sometimes I get so sick of getting wet and then having to dry off again that on Sundays, if I don't do too much, I don't like to have a shower. It's a little gross.
Hang out with Kate during the week. Yeah. Avoid her on weekends.
But just the idea of getting wet again on a Sunday, I enjoy having dry hair for the entire day.
So we normally train in the morning, start at about 6 o'clock at the pool, 6 until 8:30, and then in the evening again, start at 4 until 6:45 in the evening. And so you've got this chunk in the middle of the day which you fill with napping, recovering, which sounds really lazy, but it's an actual important part of our recovery. You can go through the day without sleeping, but the afternoon sessions are the ones we have to be fast for. So if we're not recovering, which I'm really glad includes napping because it's one of my hobbies. I'm trying to think of a job to do after swimming where napping's a part of it. Maybe right. A bed tester or something like that, but I can't think of anything that's going to be part of my job when I move out. But when I move on from swimming, it's not really a transferable skill, but I am ace at napping, and then we're both at uni and doing a bit of that in the middle of the day. And
Oh, you are both at uni.
Yeah.
What are you studying?
I'm studying media and communications, so moving through incredibly slowly. Just a couple of subjects a semester. It's great because most of it's online, so we both travel quite a bit with swimming interstate and then internationally as well. So yeah, chipping away at it very slowly.
And Bronte, what are you doing?
I'm doing a business degree, major in PR, almost done. Hopefully be done by next year. That's the goal.
Going to uni, and I didn't realise that, is that something that you do to plan for your life beyond swimming, or is it something you do just to keep your sanity in the middle of the day? Because as you say, you can't really have a job.
It's both, really. It's swimming is not the most mentally stimulating thing. You're staring at a black line for 4+ hours a day. So I actually plan a lot of my assignments or write them in my head. It's also a good memory test because then you have to get home and type them really quickly. But it is planning for life after sport because we have this really weird thing where we're incredibly good at what we do, but there's an expiry date, and you go from being like the best in the world at something to being really bad and having no experience and no idea what you're doing. And life after sport can be incredibly scary, and it's quite well documented that a lot of athletes struggle with it. So for us, it's really important to make sure that you're thinking of something other than swimming, because as we're quite obsessive people, most athletes are. So you can tend to, if you're just swimming, you can tend to get really obsessed with it, which is unhealthy because you have to have a balanced life. That's really, really well documented that the people who do best at something that they love have a good balance in their life. So yeah, it's both. It's to keep your brain occupied, but also to begin to plan for life after sport.
You mentioned an expiry date, Cate. What is the expiry date for a swimmer? For a female swimmer? And is it different to a man?
It can be different. I think it's different because as women start to get into their 30s, everyone starts to think about having kids if they haven't already. Whereas, you've got someone like Anthony Irvin who's swimming and he's almost 40, and he doesn't really have to think about that. However, there have been swimmers go away and have kids and come back. There's a Danish girl doing a comeback right now. She swims in our event. She was in Rio and then she retired and had little Billy, and now Billy's on pool deck. She's 2 years old on pool deck, like pottering around.
So cute.
Billy does not want to bire me. I keep trying to make friends with this kid and she's like, my mum races you. Like, she's got no idea, but she doesn't like me very much. But it's probably... I think it depends when you want to start getting on with the rest of your life.
Yeah, to give you an idea, I'm the oldest girl on the Australian swim team at 27. So, we've had men swim into their 30s, but I don't actually think that there's been women on the team in their 30s, or very, very few. So it's, partly do you decide to get on with the rest of your life? For a lot of people, the rest of their life is going to be provide them with more financial stability as well. So for a lot of swimmers, you look at competing for Australia versus I've studied accounting, I've now finished my degree, I know that I can earn more money being an accountant. Maybe I should retire and do that. For other people, your body just falls apart, and probably that's another big impact on people retiring, is that your body just can't take the day in, day out grind that's required.
Yeah, I was, when I was doing my research before today, meeting you guys, I obviously know who you are and I've followed your careers, but, consuming a lot of information in a short amount of time, it all starts to blur. It's like Cate wins, Bronte wins, Bronte's had an operation, Cate's sick. Like the highs and the lows, it's this sort of condensed form of a lotness. And there's no question in there, but it's more like those ups and downs. How do you manage those mentally?
I think it's also been a long time. We've been doing this for a long time. I made my first Australian team when I was 15, turning 16. So my first Olympics when I was 16 years old. And I'm now 27. So that's, 11 years later. So I've been doing this for a really long time. So it's not surprising that there are but life is full of ups and downs and highs and lows. And mine is just, you can kind of look at a linear timeline of it. But I think that's part of why we love sport, really.
Why?
Because you see played out in front of you the highs, the lows, you see the effort, you see the reward, you see the heartbreak in a really beautiful way. It kind of mirrors life. And it translates into any language across cultures. It's a really pure form of human struggle and triumph and heartbreak. And I don't watch sporting events to watch someone win. I watch them try and win, and I want to see the effort, and I want to see their passion, and I want to see that all play out in front of me. And the end result doesn't matter as much as the effort.
The end result that most of us sees is the Olympics. That's the most high-profile bit of what you guys do. There's 4 years in between those, though.
I know.
How do you stay motivated in those 4 years? I mean, I've got a short concentration span at the best of times.
Well, we're not just doing an Olympics every 4 years. So we do have a meet every year. That's our main meet, whether it's a Commonwealth Games or a World Championship. So there's something to aim for every year.
But once a year, right? For a few minutes in the pool.
Oh, yeah. So,
Yes.
I mean, if you pitch this to someone, if you're like, okay, so you're going to have literally 1 minute, well, less than a minute every 4 years, and that's where you're going to be able to achieve your dream. And for the rest of it, you're going to dedicate your whole life to that minute. Would you like to do that? They'll be like, are you kidding me? But it's more than just that. Like, we don't swim just because we love competition. I love competition. It's my favorite thing to do, but I can do competition every single day that I'm training because I'm training with one of the best people in the world and my sister. So it's the love of swimming that sort of keeps you going. I mean, no one does an Olympic sport. Olympic sports are not typically that high profile outside of an Olympics, so no one does that just for the Olympics. It's not just for the glory, and that's what Kate's talking about before. It makes it all that more special because you know that someone's sacrificed a lot to be there just by the fact that they are doing an Olympic sport. So it's not, it does sound insane that like once every 4 years you're going to get a moment to shine, but I think it just goes to show that people don't get into Olympic sports to shine. They get into it for the effort and the drive, and that's why I started doing it. I looked at the Olympic Games in 2000. I saw the Australian swimmers doing really well. We were still living in Africa then, and then we moved across. I knew we were about to move to Australia, and I was like, okay, great, cool. If I'm going to be Australian, I'm going to have to do that. That's what they seem to be really good at. I'm going to have to go over there and give that a shot.
And you guys weren't swimmers then?
We had always been able to swim. So
I mean, you could swim, but you weren't capital S swimmers.
Well, there wasn't really squads. We grew up in Malawi, which is an incredibly small African country. Our parents are South African, and they got married, went traveling the world for a year, came back to South Africa, and I think just didn't want to go back to their usual everyday lives there. So on a whim, Dad, who is an accountant, of all things, took a contract in Malawi, and for nearly 5 children later, because we're 2 of 5 children. The youngest was born in Australia when we moved. Our mum was a synchronised swimmer for South Africa, so we actually did synchronised swimming when we were younger. She used to.
I came fourth in the Malawi National Championship. I came fourth. There was only 4 people, but I still came fourth.
Well, there you go. You placed. Did you wear a lot of makeup and those amazing costumes?
Oh,
it's really hard synchronised swimming, right?
It is hard.
Yeah, Mum helped make like the little hair pieces for us. So she would coach the high school kids in Malawi, and we would go along. And we were 6 and 8 at the time, and we just had to join in with the high school program.
Mum was like, you either get in and you don't complain, or you sit on the side and I don't want to hear from you. And it's impossible to sit on the side. So
I like her very much.
Yeah.
Yes, she was like, you either need to participate or you need to be over there because I've got a job to do. So we started doing that. I can still do a ballet leg and an oyster. I know.
An oyster. Yeah. So then you came to Australia and you got involved in swimming squads or clubs. What are they called? Because you wanted to make friends, right? And you thought it would be a good way to integrate into your new country.
Yeah. We ended up renting a house that was like 600 metres down the road from a swim club, and we were only starting school the following year. And so we decided to walk down. It was a week before Mum was due to give birth to Abigail, our youngest. So we turned up with a family of 4 children, and a week later there was a family of 5 children there.
Wow. How's your brother Hamish, by the way? I wanted to ask after him.
Hamish is going pretty well, actually. He's pretty much stayed out of hospital this whole year. So he's got very complicated health, but it's I mean, our mum was also a nurse in a previous life before she, looked after 5 children, and she's actually studying midwifery as well as being full-time carer to our brother. So that's pretty impressive. But she manages to do a high level of care at home, which is pretty great. It means he gets to stay at a hospital and stay around the people who love him, and it's pretty good to see him doing well again.
You must miss him living in Sydney now.
Yeah, that is the hardest thing. We moved down to Sydney about 9 months ago, so in January, and that's the hardest thing, being away from your family.
Yeah, Hamish doesn't really get telephones. He's never quite figured that out. Like, he really likes hearing your voice on there, but he's kind of nonverbal, so he doesn't really speak. But if we're there in person and we talk to him, he sort of like has special sounds that he makes just for us, and but he doesn't quite understand like the phone because he's blind as well. So when you're there, he can like sense that you're there and smell you and hear you, and it's this whole thing. But when it's the phone, he gets like really, really confused.
If you're lucky, you get some really deep breathing, and it's like Hamish concentrating. You're chatting to him, Hamish, like, how are you going? And you just hear some really deep breathing. Mum's like, he's looking a little confused.
Does he have different relationships with each of his 4 sisters? Like, can he differentiate between you and...
Yeah, he definitely knows who we are, and he's actually born on Bronte's birthday, so 4 years age difference. So
did you feel a little bit ripped off about that?
Yeah, I actually remember it. It was my 4th birthday, and suddenly Mum was like, okay, so the party's cancelled, but you just watch The Lion King. We only had 2 movies in Malawi to watch. One was The Lion King, the other was My Fair Lady. So it was The Lion King. Watch The Lion King, and I'm going to be back. And then she went to the hospital, and Hamish was a stillborn, which was how he got all his brain damage because there was no oxygen, and they chucked him on an aeroplane and flew him straight to South Africa, and so Mum kind of never came back. And our friend came over. This is the weirdest memory. She came over and she made us orange juice, but it was like the weakest orange cordial, and I remember just having this like meltdown, like, it's my birthday and this cordial's too weak, nothing's happening, my mum's not here.
That must have been really incredibly tough. That's a lot. And they say that the siblings of kids who are born with disabilities or who have disabilities have a special kind of empathy. And I don't use that word special. I know it's not the word that people are meant to use anymore. But how do you think having Hamish, how did it impact upon you guys as kids?
I think that we, right from the beginning, and this is a real testament to our parents as well, we saw Hamish, and we still see Hamish, as a whole person. He was always a whole person. There was, I remember being in high school and, just saying, my brother's in a wheelchair, and people would say, I'm so sorry. And I was just like, why? To me, he's always been a full person in his own right. Yes, he interacts slightly differently, but he provides as much value to us and to society as most other people. It's just not something that you can measure, and it doesn't look good in numbers in black and white. But the conversations that he invokes and the perspective that he gives us, and the laughs, and it's been really, and I think that, our parents also saw him right from the beginning. They, of course, you want to help him as much as possible and make his life easier, but they never tried to fix him. They valued him exactly as he was. And so we've done that. And I think that that's something that when I interact with people with disabilities, because a lot of time people are scared and they don't know how to do it, but they're just a person. Like you just talk to them as if you would normally, so I think that it's given us a lot of perspective in that respect.
Yeah, plus, I mean, if you come home from a training session, you're like, my life is hard. I've just been swimming for 2 hours. I sweat a lot today. And then you come home and your brother's sitting there and he's just like, and feeling a bit sorry for yourself. And he's sitting there and he's just waiting for someone to offer him a drink or something. He's just happy to see you and he's just laughing, and he can't do anything for himself. He's like the most patient. He's incredibly tough because he's in a lot of pain a lot of the time, but you wouldn't know it. It doesn't matter how much pain he's in. You can normally get a little smile or a laugh out of him if you just try hard enough. And
gentle bullying, just like, come on, Hamish, give me a smile.
Actually, you asked before, do we have different relationships with him? Kate's really calm and gentle and nice with him, whereas, because like he was born on my birthday, I had this thing where I was like, oh, this is like my brother. So I'm a little rough with him. He sometimes flinches when I come near, but I think it's a flinch out of love.
Oh, definitely a flinch out of love.
Yeah.
Lots of people flinch out of love. It's the love flinch.
Oh yeah. Well,
haven't you heard of the love flinch?
The love flinch.
I get it a lot.
Yeah. Just like the love wince.
Yeah.
Similar to that. Cate, you stole Bronte's swimming trophies.
I did.
Like literally, not
not figuratively. No, literally.
Figuratively, she has actually stolen all of my trophies as well. Just to be clear.
Figuratively and literally. Tell me about the literally.
Yeah, it was actually how I got into swimming and decided that this was what I wanted to do with my life. As Bronte said, she watched the Olympics in 2000, and from then on, that was what she was going to do. So when we moved to Australia, she was the most obnoxiously dedicated 7-year-old you will ever come across. She would, because we could just walk to the pool, so she would get up early and walk to the pool and watch the older kids train, and then she'd get in and like obsessively do everything exactly right. Now I I suffer from this chronic disease called laziness.
Yes, I've guessed that about you by looking at your career.
Well, okay. At 9 years old, it was particularly bad. And I would kind of go to the pool and I'd do little turtle turns at the flag. So it was just too far to swim the 5 meters in and the 5 meters out. Or I'd purposely let people lap me so that I could miss out on doing like 50 meters. The only problem is that I was training with Bronte, who not only knows how many laps she's done, she knows how many laps you've done. So I'd get to the wall.
Annoying.
Oh,
I can
so
count.
annoying.
What are you going to say? I can count.
So annoying.
There's nothing wrong with counting.
And I'd like
Details.
Counting's great.
I'd touch the wall and she'd like tap me on the head and say, you've got 2 more laps.
Oh, God.
I know.
Did you have many friends?
I didn't need friends. I had swimming. The water is my friend.
Lucky.
And no, I didn't have many friends.
Lucky she's relaxed a bit.
And so you won the gold medals and you stole them, the trophies.
Yes.
Whatever they were called.
So we went to our first swimming carnival and I won bronze in my 25 metres backstroke. Little Miss Overachiever over here. Won 4 gold medals and an age championship trophy. And she used to wear these around her neck and they'd clink together as she come walking down the corridor. So you'd hear her throughout like the whole house. And she brought her trophy to the dinner table and would position it next to the glass of water and was just a little obnoxious and rubbed it in my face because I couldn't clink. I only had one.
Harder.
Yeah.
Harder to clink one.
Yeah, harder. Yeah. So, yeah, I stole her medals and her trophies and I hid them under my bed. And Mum, obviously, after Bronte went crying to her, kind of found them and sat me down and she said, Cate, Bronte's worked really hard for those and I've seen you train and you're really lazy and you don't deserve to have what Bronte has. And if you want what she has, you're going to have to work for it. Otherwise, you're going to have to be content with whatever you end up winning for the effort that you put in. And so I decided that I wanted to clink when I came walking down corridors. So, and you can't have a younger sister beating you.
Truth bomb from Mrs. Campbell.
Yeah, you just can't.
Yeah, Mum's got lots of truth bombs she's dropped on us over the years. They're not always that pleasant to hear at the time,
but yeah, then I just decided that I wanted to work, and poor old Bronte at 7 created one of her biggest rivals.
Yeah, I sort
You
of
didn't
created
think that
this.
out very well, did you?
No, I didn't. Look, you know that thing where it's like you never know all the consequences of your actions? I'm sorry, but I didn't realize that when I was 7, like showing off my medals and being really proud of myself was going to end up with like me never going to have bragging rights ever again in any house in the country, because I can be second fastest in the world and I'm still not the fastest person in my family, as was the case last year. So I got all my bragging out of the way when I was 7, because now I'm not allowed to brag anywhere. She's just going to whip out all of her medals, which are more than mine. So yeah, that was it's a bit of karma, isn't it? I think I was a bit young for karma, but still it was karma.
I was going to ask you both, that was almost 20 years ago and things are very different now. Like even your mother saying that to you, you're a bit lazy. If you want to be as good as Bronte, you need to swim harder. Now it would be, you would have been clinking because you would have many participation medals around your neck. And I want to ask about, I have views on it as a parent because I've seen how that works, that everyone goes home from every carnival with many ribbons and medals. As athletes, do you think that that is a good thing, that everyone's feeling good about themselves and kids are now getting the opportunity or saying that they don't want to participate in carnivals because they find it humiliating, so they're getting exemptions to not compete? What's your view on that?
It's hard, isn't it? Because you want to increase participation. That's one of like the biggest things that we love about our sport, is that it can be pretty accessible to everyone, and that's what we want, is to stimulate that grassroots and get everyone involved and everyone in the water and everyone enjoying it, and you want everyone to have fun, and you don't want people in tears because they didn't succeed, right?
Yeah.
And putting succeed in quotation marks you can't see on a podcast, but I did the little air quotes. And it's tricky because at the same time you want, like, what we craved and what we always wanted was high performance, and seeing the result of an effort and seeing like, oh, I didn't put in the effort, I didn't quite get the result. And that's another fantastic thing about sport is it's, especially when you're a kid, it's one of the first places I think you can learn to see effort put in and results increase. It doesn't always happen academically for kids. It can be quite a lot harder, but you can see, oh, I trained twice a week, I got a second faster, or I moved up in my placings, or whatever it is. So I personally, it's hard to pick a side, but I would definitely be more on the side of rewarding the people who are achieving. And but at the same time, you don't want to undervalue everyone else. I mean, even now on the swim team, our goal is to value everyone as humans and then celebrate performance on top of that.
I like that.
Yeah, so I think that also it's really important that you don't measure your success or failure by the end result. It should be the effort that you've put in, and it shouldn't be a gold medal, a silver medal, or a bronze medal. We were always valued as when we grew up. We didn't have sort of super strict swimming parents. We were always valued as people first. You know, we were greeted with a hug no matter whether we win, lose, or draw, which is really important. And once you do that, you take away the fear of failure, because we weren't afraid to fail. We weren't afraid to go out and try, because we knew that we had a safe place to come back to. But I think the thing with handing out participation awards for everyone is that you don't expose children to failure. And failure is how you learn and grow. So if you're saying, oh, good job, that was fine, you're creating a really almost like a mediocre society, or unresilient people who don't know how to pick themselves up from a bad situation or a poor result, because everyone has them. And they're such an important part of life. And getting those skills from a really young age kind of programs you for success in later life, because it's one of those really weird things. It's one of life's great ironies that the only place where success is possible is also where failure is possible. So if you're not willing to put yourself in a position that you're going to fail, you're also not going to succeed. And so it is really important to teach children to say that, yeah, you didn't do that well, but you know what? You can work harder and you can try again. And I still love you and I still value you. You've got to have that love, value, trust, safe place to come back to, because you don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to feel like a failure because you haven't achieved exactly what you wanted. You want to feel supported and empowered to try again, which I think is the difference.
Can you each think of a time when failure was in fact a motivator for you?
I think that failure for me, it shows that I need change.
So when was a time when you've learned that from failure, where at the time it felt like the worst thing in the world, but it actually lit a fire in your belly, or relit a fire in your belly?
Well, I guess the biggest example for me, I've had it throughout my entire career, but at the 2016 Olympic Games, I was the world record holder going into the women's 100 freestyle, and I underperformed hugely in that final. The weight of expectation, it felt like a real physical burden. I can remember, trying to clear my thoughts, and it was like I was staring into TV static, and I couldn't grasp on anything. And I think I ended up getting sixth in that final, and just heartbroken, I think is the best description. But
is that when you left the pool and people said you were not happy enough or positive enough?
Oh, people said so many things. Yeah, you're vilified no matter how you make that situation.
What happens after a race, though? Can you explain? So, like, physically, are there physical things you have to do? Like, do you go and have counselling? Like, what's the process for after you hit that wall and whatever place you come?
Yeah, so you hit the wall and you turn around and you look at the scoreboard first. I didn't even need to turn around. I don't think I did. I couldn't even tell you the time that I swam.
I could tell you the time.
Numbers.
I'm going to get to
little
you in a
missed
minute.
numbers.
I want to know how you felt watching it. Go on. Or were you in the pool too?
I was in the pool too.
And then a referee blows a whistle and everyone exits the pool, and then you go straight to media. So you go through the mix zone. So
See, that's
you get
awful.
interviewed straight away. So you get TV interviews, and then you go around to the print journos and you walk through and you do your time with the print journos, and then you go and you collect your clothes. And then if you're not a medal winner, which I was not, you make the long walk back down to the warm down pool. And then where the Australian team was situated was right down the other end of the warm down pool. So I had to walk past all the other countries of all the other and all the other teams until I got back to where the Australians were. And that's a really long, lonely walk. Fortunately, I had my coach waiting for me, and he was there with a hug, not a word of reprimand.
Was the hug the worst part though? Because you know how sometimes when you're upset, you're holding it together, and if anyone's nice to you, that's when you lose it.
Oh yes, yeah. It was hard, but it's what you need. I needed to be valued. As I was. And, we've been with our coach for 18 years. He's our only coach we've ever had. He was at that swimming pool that we turned up at just after we moved to Australia. So, there's a lot of history between us. And then you get down and you swim down, and then you get back on the bus and you head back to the Olympic Village.
Can you cry
go to
and
the
swim
dining
at the
hall.
same time?
Oh, yes. It's actually great. It's like you have to empty your goggles because you can fill up, and salt water isn't great for your eyes. So you empty it. But... yeah, it's and then you have to go to sleep because I had to wake up the next morning. This is 3 a.m. now. I had to wake up the next morning and continue racing. So it's almost like you have to shelve it and you can't deal with it right then and there. And then sort of after you finish racing, after you've done your job, then you can have your meltdown.
So you had to wait a little while. It's like I'm going to put these feelings in my pocket. Yeah. You just build a little box inside your head and you pack it away, and because you can't afford to open that and begin to explore it too much because you've still got a job to do. Bronte, how did you feel in that race?
That was a tough race for me as well for different reasons. It was incredibly tough turning around and seeing the board and seeing that Cate hadn't done what I'd really wanted for her, and that was a tough thing for me.
What did you want to see on the board?
I'd love to see Cate fulfill her dream and win that Olympic gold medal. I mean, it's a huge thing, and she had the potential to do it. She has the potential to do it, so the potential's not gone at all.
But you wanted to see your name first, obviously.
Okay. So if I wanted to see my name first, it was a little bit of a tricky situation. I've been injured for 8 months beforehand. I'd barely been able to swim over 3K. I was in...
Is that your shoulder?
Yeah, my shoulder. I was not in fighting condition. So as much as, of course, you want... There was a bit of a reality thing that, like, Cate was swimming over a second faster than me. So, like, that was the expected result. Not that always the expected result happens, as in Com Games, I expected Cate to beat me, and then I managed to get on the wall first, which was nice. But it was a tough race to jump out of, and then, like you say, it's a very surreal thing because the race is over in less than a minute, and then it's done, and the result's there, and everything just keeps turning and rolling, and it doesn't matter whether you've performed well or underperformed, you've still got to go through that whole same process and the whole same swim down, the whole same seeing the physios, massages, getting out of the media.
Did you place in that race?
No, I came fourth by 0.05, which I'm pretty sure is faster than the blink of an eye, which is quite a small measure of time.
There are so many tiny measures of time, right, in swimming. Yeah. It feels so brutal.
It is brutal, but I was probably the hardest thing about that race, putting aside how I was feeling for Cate at the time, was the fact that I was really, really proud of it, but no one else thought I should be. So that was a tough thing.
You were proud of it for you. Yeah. I
was just happy that I'd managed to put myself behind the blocks, and I went within half a second of my best time, but it wasn't really seen as a victory. But that was, that's sort of the thing I think about Olympic sport a lot, is no one really knows the backstory of people, and you see them for such a short time. And I hadn't told anyone I was injured. I didn't want anybody to know. I I didn't want to show that weakness. So no one had an appreciation of where I was coming from. They're like, oh, she's half a second off her time. That's underperforming. But for me, being within half a second of my time.
Being in the final.
Well, and yeah, being in the final being in an Olympic final is pretty rare, isn't it? But when you get to the top of performance, you end up always wanting more. So you never appreciate. I mean, I'm sure when I'm finished swimming, I'll be like, oh, great, that's fantastic. But you're always pushing for more while you're in it. And yeah, without sharing my story and not wanting to show that weakness to anyone, it obviously didn't give anyone an appreciation of where I was coming from, and they saw it as a huge failure. Whereas I was walking around being like, I'm quite proud of that. So that was a weird juxtaposition.
And when did you first see Cate after that race?
Oh, immediately. So we were a few lanes apart, and we had to get out the separate ends of the pool. So we came around and met in the middle, and I just gave you a hug, and just that was also a good moment for me to just like look at the scoreboard and be like, okay, there's 8 people in that race, 3 people are over the moon stoked. There's 5 others that are less stoked, and just look at my name there and in the 4th place and Cate's name in the 6th place and be like, okay, great, that's motivation for 4 years. That'll get me through.
Put that in your pocket.
Just a couple of seconds. Yeah, I'm good to go for another 4 years.
I mean, there's such tiny amounts of time, it seems ridiculous to even try to analyse what lives in those little gaps. But what is the difference? What are some of the things that can impact how fast you swim? Is it literally, are your legs shaved? Is it like, what are some of the things that can impact on that?
How nerdy do you want to go?
Very nerdy.
Okay. So you can little tiny things, so something as simple as taking one extra stroke on the way out. You've expended a tiny little bit more energy on the way out, which means that you're not going to have as much to come home. It's being a couple of stroke rates higher. It's not firing off the block. We should be, your reaction time should be 0.6 to 0.7 of a second. If you're 0.8, that's 0.1 that you've lost.
Point one is, to give you an idea of the 50 freestyle, the difference between first place and 5th place was 0.07. So 0.1...
7 100ths of a second. So 0.1, you go from winning to coming 6th.
That's just silly.
I know.
It is silly.
Just to add to Bronte's, job description. Oh, you get your one chance every 4 years. You train so hard in between. Oh, and by the way, your win-lose margins are 100ths of a second. Who wants to sign up for this?
You guys are not selling this well. I'm going to have to reconsider my decision to pursue an Olympic swimming career after my career in media.
I didn't know that was a dream of yours.
It just no longer is because of what you just said.
I was going to offer you free lessons.
Yeah, well, I'll take those. So the aftermath, because it's not just what you think of yourself and what your teammates think of you and everything. Now there's what the whole world thinks of you. And I suppose once upon a time we were all shielded from that lovely information. Now we're not. And I know that even, I imagine you've all got your phones in the village. You've got access to everything. How do you manage and this idea that you belong to us and that your victory is our victory, but your loss is something you should be ashamed of because you've let us down at home on the couch. How do you manage that over the days after a race?
Yeah, that's really interestingly put. I really like that your victory is you can share that, but your loss, that's for you to bear all by yourself. You're all by yourself and no one else wants any part of it.
And please explain.
Yeah.
Why did you let us down?
Not only are you all by yourself, but they like heap it on as well. They're like, what? You're not ashamed enough? Have some more shame. Like they're just throwing it on you.
The shame is, it's like it's a pylon really. That's what it is. How do you manage that? How did you?
So I usually turn off from social media during competition, and I did for particularly the aftermath. I went back on after I'd finished competing and kind of had a look at my Facebook page and had to get someone else to come and clean it out for me because it was horrendous. It was horrific. I think that I went back to the people who I knew loved me regardless and who valued me regardless. And I think that that's a really important thing if you do want to succeed. It's to have those people around you who are going to be there and who applaud you for your effort and for daring and for striving for greatness, even if you maybe fell short. And that was something that was incredibly helpful. I think that our fear of people's perception is often greater than what it actually is, because we live in a society where we thrive on outrage. And so the negative comments and the negative sentiments get put in this light and they're splashed across newspaper headlines. But it's really interesting because the press should reflect the views of the public, or they should inform the public on issues that we feel like are really important to us. However, the majority of people who I spoke to face were really genuinely proud of how we'd achieved. I mean, I did have the people who would come up and say, "Oh, I lost money on you. I bet on you in that race and you lost." I went through, 6
I'm
months
sorry
of that.
for your
I was
loss.
just like, yeah. I was
Where
like,
should I send flowers?
yeah, literally, I was just like, "Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Like, don't gamble."
That's the whole point of sport. The whole point is you don't know who's going to win.
Exactly.
That's why it's exciting. So don't get upset about it.
Don't get me wrong. I definitely had the fair share of that. But I think that my fear was that everyone would be like that. And I think that particularly in Australia, a gold medal or a good performance forgives a multitude of evils. We somehow think that because you're winning, that you're a stellar, upright person. And I think that if certain tennis players started winning, that we would start singing their praises and we would applaud them for, their outlandish behaviour or
Lovable rogues.
Yeah, exactly right. And
Yeah, when you win, you go from being a brat to a character.
Yeah.
And all that's changed is your performance, which is a weird message to send people, but it's pretty Australian.
What made you decide to write the open letter?
I think that I write quite a bit on my phone. I usually just do big brain dumps. Exactly what I'm feeling at the time just gets written down and shelved for a different time. And I'd done a lot of that. I'd had a lot of flying, and that's a particularly good time to do it because you're not really doing anything else. And someone asked, would you write a post, and it can be about anything, but it comes from you and you have complete control over it. Now, at that point, I'd kind of talked to a couple of journalists and told my side of the story, but it had always been my story through someone else's lens. And so the idea of taking back control and taking back power and was really appealing. It was also a different challenge. I decided to, in 2017, not contest for the Australian swim team. So I wasn't going to be representing Australia, and I needed to see if I was good at anything else or if I could do anything else.
Why did you decide not to contest?
Because I wanted to be relieved of the pressure of having to be the best in the world. In Australia, if you're considered a good swimmer, you have to be amongst the best in the world. And I'd been doing that since I was 16 years old.
What did your year off look like?
Oh, it was great. I went traveling. I stayed up late. I got to like 11 p.m. on a weekday. Can you believe it?
Girls Gone Wild.
I know.
Settle down. Settle down.
I just did all the things that you can't do as an elite athlete. I went to music gigs. I met my friends after they had finished their work on a Friday night.
Really
Friday night
things.
drinks. Friday night drinks. It's something that I really look forward to once I decide to give up swimming, because we train until 7 p.m. on a Friday and then you're too buggered to do anything.
Yeah, and then it's time for a nap.
And then it's time for a nap.
And some Vita Brits.
Yeah.
Body image is something that I imagine swimmers have to contend with. Like, there's this idea I have in my head that athletes, like, your bodies are instruments and you don't have cares about that kind of thing, and you're not insecure because it's about what your body can do. Like, more than anyone else in society, if you're an athlete, it's about not how your body looks but how it works. Is that true, Bronte? Is it true for you?
True. It is for me. It's not always true, and I've got a sport that requires me to have quite a lean and what you would typically see as a more desirable body shape. But if say you're doing weightlifting or you're in women's water polo where you have to put on a few kilos to be heavy enough to withstand the brutality that you're going through, it's sort of a different story again. I mean, it is very interesting. Our bodies are very much on display as swimmers, and I sort of remember feeling uncomfortable about it when I was growing up, going through my teen years, because I've always been pretty muscular as a result of all the swimming, and I just wanted to fit into, like, everyone was wearing those halter neck dresses, and I just wanted to, like, look good in that, and I just did not look good. Like, your head looks so tiny when your shoulders are that broad, and I just wanted to wear my little halter neck and fit in with the girls at school, but it wasn't really an option. But at the same time, it's the shift of, like, okay, great, like, I can't wear a spaghetti strap dress, but look at all these other things that my body can do. And we had that talk pretty early with family, and they never really. I think I brought it up once. Mum was like, "Yeah, but look how great you are, so don't even stress about it." And we moved on pretty quickly. But it can be a struggle. You're in your swimmers on national and then international TV. There's no room to hide anything, and
you're often around quite old school male coaches, which doesn't help things. I think that more that there's a bit of a culture, particularly in the old school coaches, that to be fastest you have to be as lean as possible, which isn't necessarily the case, because you need some reserves for when you're going and competing, but then you also need to be really strong, particularly in our events, the sprint events. I was actually really surprised after I took time off in 2017. I lost a lot of my muscle, so I leaned up quite a lot, and there were always, like, older middle-aged men come up to me and say, "Oh wow, you're looking really skinny. You look in great shape."
As a compliment.
And I was like,
or just as a surprise thing. They'd come, like, when we were walking around. These are not, like, people involved with swimming, but they'd be like, "Oh, you're having time off?" Yes. "Oh, well, you actually look quite good." And you're like, "Well, actually, what?"
Wow.
And then, I was like, I'm 7 kilos off my peak performance race weight. It's really, really interesting. So, for us, I think that we've got a really good culture. Our coach has never held us to a specific weight or skin folds or anything like that. He's like, if your body is performing well, I don't need the numbers. I can look at you.
Yeah, we can do things like DEXA scans, which tell you where your muscle's situated, but it's never for we need you to be skinny, which is we need you to perform, which is. It's a pretty good space to be in, but when you take that out into society, it's not quite the same thing. And I don't know, Australia is interesting like that too. I mean, you look at it and you're like, what do you need for your body to perform? What do you need to perform as a basic human being? And it's not a size 0.
Yeah.
So it seems weird that that's the most desirable thing. Like, for us, it's very clearly the most desirable thing is the performance of our body. And that doesn't really reach out into broader society.
But also the physical, but then the mental side as well. It's about overall health. And my goodness, having ice cream and Milo after a really hard training session makes me feel better.
Good.
And if I'm feeling better, then I'm going to be swimming better. So
I thought you were going to say you couldn't have that. I was going to be really sad.
No. It's all about, the whole package.
There's your bodies, though, your swimming bodies, and then there's your bodies as women. Like, as Bronte and Cate. Do you have that?
I think I kind of get that, and not so much with the swim body and the normal body. I sort of get that with, that's how I manage all my injuries. I'm almost like, they're like an external thing. I'm like, oh, like the shoulder needs managing, or the neck, or the back, or the hips playing up. Like, it's just like a little bit removed. So I've got this, like, it's almost like I've got my two bodies, my one that I want to walk around in all the time, and the one that's like sitting in the cupboard and I'm putting all my maintenance into. And that's sort of how I separate it a little bit. And so I can manage it as much as possible, but then I can also walk around and try to do normal things. And if something's crying for attention, that's actually probably the hardest part about being injured, is not just turning up at the pool and performing and swimming when you're in pain. It's the fact that suddenly, like when my back was really bad, I couldn't be here talking to you because I can't sit down for that long. So that means you can't go out and have dinner with your friends. That means that like even doing uni work is incredibly hard now because you can't sit down. It was at a point where like the only time I was comfortable was when I was like lying down flat. And as much as I do love napping, I also do not want to spend my entire day in bed. And every hobby that I picked up, and restricts your hobbies obviously, but any hobby that I picked up, like learning to play the guitar, that was suddenly an impossible thing because my neck can't turn, and I still have to look where my fingers go for the chords because I'm not actually great at guitar. But it's that's the point where it's your body is a machine, and it is almost separate to your personality, and so you've got to sort of, for me, that was really when that happens, when it started to,
because when the machine breaks.
Yeah, when it breaks,
you've got to not take that personally, right?
Or when it begins to impact on your life outside of the sport, you know, when it begins to impact on your everyday life. It isn't, you know, sometimes I really enjoy the fact that I can leave swimming at the pool, and when we get home, I don't talk about it. Most of my friends don't really follow it, or they follow me and they're interested in it because of me, but they're not really into swimming or sport really in general.
So it's not a job that you really can take home, is it?
No, it's not a job that you want to take home, I think is more the point. I mean, there are people who I can talk to about it, of course, but they're normally people who are going through the exact same thing. They're normally other swimmers or other sports people. They're always really interesting to talk to. And yeah, when I'm outside of swimming, I really prefer to not talk about it unless Mia invites me in to talk about it.
And we can talk about it at length. Can romantic love ever compete with swimming? Like the focus that you need? Is there room in your life for a partner?
There's a room for a very understanding type of partner who is very willing to accept all the restrictions that come with it and accept that like they're probably never going to understand the crazy level that
of focus and obsession.
Yeah, that they value you, and then they're like, okay, great, she really believes in that. I'm gonna let her do that and support her in that. And it's definitely not easy. I'd never really found time to get into a long relationship with anyone before 2016. I was very much a focus on swimming, and so I was like, okay, great, I'm going to dedicate this part of my life to that, and actually really enjoyed being single then as well. That sounded really dirty because I put it in like a low voice, but I just... I just enjoyed exploring, like, there's so much. You can put so much into your sport that there's barely time to discover yourself outside of that. And it took me a long time to do that before I was ready to even get into a relationship with anyone. And then when I did it, it worked out, or has worked out pretty well so far. But it can't be a competition because swimming's always going to win. So if they're going in there being like, we want your attention, man. Yeah, if your boyfriend wants your attention, they're never going to win against swimming. And they've come into their relationship with the expectation that for a while, swimming's always going to come first. And then there's a period where you switch back to you come first now. And that's typically after a major meet, or it'll now be as we start gearing up for Olympics. It's anybody, and it goes for friendships in your life as well. It just goes for, okay, swimming comes first, and there's going to be a time for you. And I love making time for my friends. And even if it's just like sending them a meme or a text message or that sort of, that's what I can give you now. And then afterwards there's a time for you. But yeah, if you're in
4 years, we'll have a drink.
In 4 years, let's go out for Friday night drinks.
I'm very excited about those Friday night drinks.
I cannot wait.
Is that why, do swimmers more than other sports, or do athletes cross-pollinate more? Because you can understand, like, actors date actors and journalists date journalists. Or is that actually a disaster because then everyone is so focused there's nothing left over?
Well,
and you've got two divas in the relationship.
I personally don't. But, you know, there have been cases. There was a married couple on the Australian swim team for a while. And in some ways you can understand it because that other person knows exactly what you're going through. We have really odd, strange hours. So, you know, most people are at work in the middle of the day. That's when we have free time. And then we do our job outside the normal working hours. So when they're free, you're not free. So that definitely comes into it as well. I think that it's about managing, because being an elite athlete is one of the most selfish things you can do with your life, because it is all about you. Am I getting enough rest? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating enough? I need to do this. I need to do that. Or you need to do this for me. So
It's a really great dating profile.
yeah, I know.
Put that on your
Selling
Hinge
myself,
profile.
Yeah.
You need to do this for me. And do it in a video so you can get your voice in there. You got
Yeah,
really
that's
sassy
right.
just then.
That's right.
You need to have someone who understands that, and sometimes it's swimmers, and but for most people usually try and go outside.
I mean,
of
it's
the
the
sport.
people you meet as well. I mean, you're around athletes all the time, and let's be honest, there are worse bodies than the male swimming body to look at. And so you're around that all the time, and it's the people that you hang out with, and that's a big part of it. It's quite hard to meet people some of the time. Actually, a lot of the time, it's hard to have that initial introduction, and so you're around athletes all the time. So it does happen a lot, and I've personally never dated an athlete. But it doesn't mean that I never would have. It wasn't like a taboo thing. It's just I didn't really like any of them.
They're not attractive enough. What can you say?
Well, we're all a tiny bit crazy. Like I know that I'm a tiny bit
Nuts.
crazy, and I don't really want to combine that with their tiny crazy, because it might get into a big crazy.
A lot of crazy. So retirement, what happens? I mean, that sounds like a real bummer
I know.
to end on, but that's not what you're focused on. With an athlete, is the idea to retire at the top of your game, or you don't really know where your peak is until you look in the rearview mirror?
That's the hardest thing, is you do never know where your peak is. You only know you're on the peak when you're on the fall. And it's a really trap of our sport is to keep pushing, because you don't know where the peak is. You're like, just got to get more and more, and you stop appreciating
And
the
let's face
climb.
it, if you're half a second off your best pace, then go home. It's not worth turning up. So
Yeah, it's not, for me, it's not to retire in my peak. It's for me to retire when I'm not getting the enjoyment out of it. And that's, I still love swimming, and 2020's coming around, and that'll probably be my last Olympics. But I'm not going to say definitely, and I'm not going to pick when I retire until the moment that I know. I've spoken to a lot of retired athletes, so asking them when they knew. Some people decide beforehand. Someone like Bronte Barrett, who had her last swim in 2016, and she actually did her best ever time in the 200 free final, and she came 5th in that. And that was an incredible way for her to finish. And she knew that was going to be her last race, whereas other people have finished the meet and then stepped back and then just like, no, that's it. And still other people have gone on to keep on training, and one day just turned up and been like, no, I'm done. Like, they just walk into the pool and they're like, I'm not coming back, and turn around and walk out. So there's a number of different ways to do it. And I think, for me, when I no longer get that drive, if I turn up to it, I think this is probably going to be it. You've helped me come to clarity on this while I'm talking to you. When I don't give 100% in a training session, I'm done. That's maybe not one training session. We'll give myself 2 or 3.
Yeah.
If I'm not...
You could have a bad day, couldn't you?
no,
sure.
Bronte doesn't have bad days. She's perfect.
I am perfect, thank you.
Except for that time you came 4th.
Yeah, except for that time. It was still a perfect swim for her.
I'm just saying.
Fine, bring me down. I've got to stop boasting.
So 100% or go home?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if you're not... It's a lot of time and effort to put into something if you're not giving 100%. So for
80%
me,
is still a lot.
It is still a lot. If I have to be there for 2.5 hours and then have a break, and if I have to be there for 5 hours a day, and I have to be there for 5 hours anyway, if I'm not giving 100% in that 5 hours, what am I doing with those 5 hours? Why am I even giving them that? So it's either give everything or nothing. I think that's, I'm a very black and white sort of person. It's all or nothing, 100% or 0% for me. So when I turn up and I no longer want to give that 100%, that's probably a good indicator that it's time to stop.
It's the wanting, isn't it? Kate, what about you?
Yeah, it's very, very similar. I, like Bronte, because I foresee my career ending in the future. Like Bronte said, I'm not going to put a date on it. I'm not going to put an age. I think Michael Phelps said he didn't want to be swimming when he was 30, and so he retired, and then 2 years later he made a comeback. And I think that lots of people who give themselves these ultimatums and don't allow themselves to kind of come to a gradual, natural, organic clarity around when you want to retire. And so for me, as long as I love it, as long as my body holds up, as long as I feel like I still have more to give, I think that's a really important thing, that I feel like I'm not just paddling in the same spot, that I'm not just doing the same thing day in and day out and expecting a different result. If there's something new that I can try and I feel like I want to put in the effort to find out what that is. And it's literally something as small as like moving your foot half a centimetre over on the block to get a better start. Do I want to be working in those minute measures? And if the answer is yes, then I'll keep going, and as long as the enjoyment's there. But I think that it's really important to be excited about life after sport. Oh, those Friday night drinks, it's going to be so good.
Kate's just going to think every day's Friday. Like, she's going to go like full into just drinking as her job.
So I think that it's, for a long time I was really afraid of life after sport because I didn't think I could do anything else. I didn't think I was good at anything else. I still don't 100% know what I'm good at or what I will end up doing. But I have confidence in that if I put as much into whatever I do after sport as I put into what I do now, I will be fine. I may not be the best in the world, but I'll make it through and I'll be fine.
Well, let's smash it in 2020. I just loved that. Their energy together in a room, those two, is just, I don't know. I think there's something a bit magical about sisters, maybe because I don't have a sister. I always want to have a sister when I spend time with sisters. But sometimes there can be a little bit of a kind of a rivalry. And you would think with these two, given that they, their history and they do the same thing, but they really give each other such space to speak. They're very different, and you can tell that there's a real sense of not just affection and warmth, but just also respect. Cate and Bronte are just such amazing women. They do fantastic things for their community, including encouraging young kids from rural areas and also immigrant families to get into swimming through the Uncle Toby's Swim My Way program with Royal Lifesaving Society Australia. You can check out their fantastic work by heading to uncletobys.com.au/swim my way. And if you're after something else to listen to, check out my interview with another Olympic swimmer, Liesl Jones, by following the link in our show notes. She had some particularly really interesting things to say about body image. She was actually fat shamed by the media when she was at the Olympics competing, and the scars that left live on to this day. It's a really, really interesting conversation. No Filter is produced by Liza Ratliff. I'm Mia Freedman, and you can sign up for my newsletter when I write it at miafreedman.com.au, and I will see you in the meantime on Mamma Mia.